Landlords in Washington state are suing over eviction protections that require mediation before a landlord is able to evict a tenant. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News. All right, so I have an interesting story for you today, and it's going over these eviction protections up in the state of Washington. Now, I've covered Seattle many times, right? But the entire state of Washington has some very strong anti-landlord laws that are up in place. And, I've been told that it is one of the worst states overall if you are a small landlord in particular, but if you're any landlord, okay? So it's not one of those places where I would ever think of investing. But, this law here actually requires landlords to get mediation between them and the tenant before they're able to get an eviction. And that kind of law really, it adds an extra step in there where the whole process can get delayed. And that's what they're suing over right now. It's absolutely ridiculous. And I mean, mediation is saying that, hey, you know what? It's like basically saying, hey, the landlord, we're trying to stop them from being able to evict this tenant. Now, if the tenant actually talked to the landlord in the first place, explained their situation, maybe they wouldn't be getting evicted. But by the time the landlord files eviction, it's not like most landlords are filing eviction just, they're a day late, so I'm going to immediately file eviction. No, there's a big process, and a lot of stuff goes through every landlord's mind before they file eviction. Even the big landlords, they have, rules and regulations that they follow before they file evictions. Sorry, losing my voice a little bit. So before I get into the article, go ahead, hit the like and subscribe button. Maybe leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think. What do you think of these laws that require mediation before a landlord is able to evict the tenant? Okay, I mean, they basically say, hey, the landlord and the tenant need to sit down with a mediator and then, try to resolve the situation before the landlord is able to actually file for eviction and go to eviction court to get the tenant removed. I mean, I don't think it's a good idea. I think the landlord has a right to move forward with eviction, and if they don't want to talk to the tenant, they don't want to deal with the tenant, they shouldn't have to. So this article is coming from SeattleTimes.com, and it says, Washington landlords sue over eviction protection. All right, let's see what it says. Landlords are once again suing over Washington's pandemic-era eviction protections. The Washington Business Properties Association, a coalition of real estate groups, filed a lawsuit in Spokane County Superior Court this month, arguing the state's current eviction process illegally delays landlords' ability to access the courts. The complaint centers around the state's eviction resolution pilot program. Under a state law passed in 2021, landlords who want to evict a tenant for non-payment of rent must first notify a dispute resolution center in their county and wait for the center to issue them a certificate. The process is meant to allow third-party mediators who contract with the state to reach out to the tenant and try to help facilitate negotiation between the two sides. If they can reach an agreement without the landlord filing for an eviction, the thinking goes, courts are less likely to be buried in eviction cases, and tenants may be able to avoid an eviction filing on their record. So yeah, this really has to do with benefiting the state and benefiting the tenant, but there's nothing in that benefits the landlord. It really screws the landlord over, okay? Basically, every single law that you see passed usually hurts the landlord, but benefits the tenant or benefits the government. Okay, that's what all these laws are about. They don't have stuff that benefits property owners in a place like Washington or, California or, these very tenant-friendly places. They're all anti-landlord. That's why, don't even mess around with these places, or if you are messing around, make sure that you have a good set of lawyers on your side, okay? But our landlords argue the dispute resolution centers can be slow to issue the certificates, sometimes taking 6 months or longer. We're stuck. We're really at the mercy of these non-judicial entities to give us the magic ticket to be able to go to court, said Sean Flynn, vice president of the Washington Business Properties Association, and they're not doing it. When they are doing it, it's not timely. So yeah, basically the state of Washington created these, what are they called? Dispute resolution centers, right? Basically, the landlords and the tenants, they have to go to a mediator before the landlord could actually file eviction. They have to go to a mediator with the tenant. Okay, and the hope is, oh, well, maybe we can prevent this eviction. Well, these mediators, I don't know if it's government bureaucracy that's slowing the process down, or if they're just bleeding heart progressives who want to stop the eviction from happening no matter what, no matter how justified it is. But they are not allowing them to get this certificate that is necessary for them to go to eviction court. And by them not being able to get that certificate for 6+ months, that means that the landlord is eating losses, waiting just to file the eviction. Imagine, here you are, right? You've got a tenant who hasn't paid rent, right? And so the tenant already owes you a month of rent. You go down, you go through this process, this dispute resolution process, go down trying to get this certificate, and they don't give you one for the next 6 months. So now the tenant owes you 7 months of rent. $1,000 a month. Tenant owes you $7,000 now. They've been living for free for 7 months. Then you're finally able to file this eviction, and they drag you out through court. They probably are going to give the tenant a free lawyer, and the lawyer is going to extend the process as long as possible. Next thing you know, it's been a year of you not getting rent, your property sitting there, not making money. You're $12,000 in debt now. And finally you get this eviction against this tenant, get that tenant out of there, and you're out tens of thousands of dollars. That's what is going to happen because of all of this. That's a good reason to sue. It really is, because this whole process is ridiculous. It's not necessary, and it takes away property rights of the landlords. Flynn said delays are a problem across the state. Resolution Washington, the statewide coalition of dispute resolution centers, denied the charge that delays are widespread. From November through June, the median case took 22 days, according to the organization. The Washington State Attorney General's office, which will defend the state against the suit, is reviewing the complaint, spokesperson Dan Jackson said. Yeah, they're going to deny it. They're going to be like, oh yeah, it only took 22 days. No, it probably said, well, it only took 22 days after this happened. And so, but it took them it took 22 days before we sent the file up to see if the certificate could get approved. And then it took, 5 months after that, before we approved it. Yeah, that's the way this garbage works, okay? They are using fake statistics. Your lawsuit isn't coming from nothing, okay? This is a big problem for a lot of landlords. Otherwise, there wouldn't be a lawsuit, okay? Yeah, I hate government bureaucracy, but I know that is probably the real reason why all of this has taken so long, okay? It's the same reason why the rental assistance payments took forever to get out. It's the same reason why the, eviction moratorium was a complete disaster. Government bureaucracy makes everything worse. It just makes everything a lot worse. The state Supreme Court first created the eviction resolution program in a handful of counties as thousands of tenants fell behind on rent early in the pandemic. State lawmakers expanded the program as part of their attempt to stave off a wave of evictions when the state lifted its eviction moratorium. The mandate that landlords get certificates from the resolution centers in non-payment cases is set to expire next July. So yeah, it's going to be a full year before that whole ridiculous certificate nonsense ends. Okay, landlords until then are just going to continue to be screwed, especially if they got to wait 6 months to get that certificate. The process has drawn criticism from both tenant and landlord groups who say it can be opaque or slow. Low-income tenants now have the right to an attorney when facing eviction in court, but the dispute resolution process operates outside of court and public view. Tenants may negotiate with their landlord and a mediator before getting help from an attorney, sometimes leading them to accept bad deals, said Edmund Witter, senior managing attorney for the Housing Justice Project, which represents tenants in King County. And you know what landlords are going to do? And I told you about this before. They're going to pay the tenants to leave. That's the best option. When there are so many tenant protections out there, it makes sense to have to pay landlords to leave. I actually even did a poll on that on my community tab, right? That asked, hey, would you rather file for eviction or pay your tenants to leave your property? And it was almost 50-50, okay? Landlords said, hey, a lot of landlords, we will pay the tenant to leave because that is the best option to get our property back and then get another tenant in there who is able to pay and pay maybe a higher rent on top of that. So yeah, I don't blame the landlords for doing that, especially in places like the state of Washington where there's so many anti-landlord laws and so many tenant protections that it makes it almost impossible to run your business otherwise.